Good evening, Bahamas. You're tuned in to MB12, broadcasting from Cable 12 Studios on Robinson Road. Coming up tonight in news, the church blasting Bahamas Petroleum Company. We'll tell you why. A man dies tragically on the wet roads this morning. The coroner's inquest into the death of a man in police custody starts. Plus, police crack an Eastern New Providence housebreaking ring. We've got those stories and so much more coming up. I'm Paige McCartney, and MB12 starts right now. Welcome once again to MB12. Bahamas Petroleum Company's plan to win over the church seems to have backfired. Company executives have been courting church and union officials for months now ahead of the referendum on oil planned for 2015. However, a new coalition, which includes the Bahamas Christian Council, members of the trade union movement, and National Citizens Committee, slammed BPC today, saying it is very concerned about the company. The group is now calling on government to fully disclose its arrangement with BPC. Vonique Toot has more.
If oil is discovered in the Bahamas and a referendum is held in 2015, the Bahamas National Citizens Coalition intends to push a yes vote on the condition that every Bahamian household receives a six-figure check at the end of each year. However, the group, which includes the Bahamas Christian Council, says it is gravely concerned about Bahamas Petroleum Company. BPC executives have spent the past few months trying to win the church's support ahead of the proposed referendum. The company sought to educate church and union officials on oil drilling during a series of meetings. However, members of the newly formed coalition say their concerns arose following those meetings. They do not feel the company has the best interest of Bahamians at heart.
We have some very grave concerns,
which we shall
deal with in a
future
future
press conference. Trust me.
They created a company in the Bahamas, and they created 1.2 billion shares. Those shares were put on the British stock market. No Bahamian citizen in the Bahamas can access those shares directly because of the manner in which this was done. We have some very grave concerns,
which we shall.
Chairman of the Bahamas Electricity Corporation, Leslie Miller, made waves in September 2012 when he slammed BPC and suggested that government should not be entertaining the company in its bid for oil. Following last week's announcement that exploratory oil drilling would be allowed in Bahamian waters, BPC announced plans to spud an exploratory well next year. Coalition spokesperson Wesley Campbell and former Christian Council President Reverend Patrick Paul say there are still a few unanswered questions when it comes to the company.
We are troubled that the government has yet to disclose the true contents of its arrangement with a venture capitalist exploratory company whose main objective is amassing of vast profits for itself and its distant shareholders.
Coming to understand that the government had signed an agreement or a contract with a venture capital company with only some 12.5% to 25% of profit for Bahamians on a sliding scale. We see history about to repeat itself. This is categorically unjust, injurious, and unfair to democracy of our nation.
Environment Minister Kenred Dorset has said government plans to revisit the financial arrangement with BPC, noting that the fee structure needs to evolve. Paul says he believes the current arrangement would not benefit Bahamians, whom he says should be justly compensated if oil is found in the Bahamas. BPC's COO Paul Guswa says while it's premature to discuss the fee structure, it is good for the Christian Council to be involved. The Council, Trade Union Movement, and National Citizens Committee recently joined forces to speak out on this issue. They're calling for the establishment of a national sovereign trust fund.
The Bahamian people have an inalienable right to benefit from such a resource, separate and apart from royalties to the government of the Bahamas. They believe that there should be a national sovereign trust fund. 25% of all royalties should go to that trust.
From the government, in cooperation with whoever is to be the company that would do the drilling, we would need a firm commitment from them of a national sovereign fund where the least and all Bahamians benefit directly with a check at the end of each year.
The group plans to meet tomorrow to discuss the environmental aspects of oil exploration. Reporting for NB12, I'm Vonik Toot.
Well, the rainy morning turned deadly for a driver of a rental vehicle today. Christina McNeil was on the scene shortly after the accident. Here's the story.
Just days after the launch of Road Safety Week, the country has recorded its 20th traffic fatality along a dangerous stretch of Coral Harbor Road. It was a somber scene on Coral Harbor Road as police officers, investigators, and fire officials tried to determine how a silver Chevrolet Aveo ended up headfirst into a dump truck heading in the opposite direction. Superintendent Ken Strawn says police met the Chevy on the guardrail pinned beneath the dump truck.
There's a Caucasian male, single occupant of that vehicle, who is trapped in the vehicle, and we are at this time awaiting the assistance of a crane to have the truck removed from him so that we can take him from the vehicle. We are in the early days of the Road Safety Week, and we cannot overemphasize the need for persons to exercise due caution and care while they use the streets of the Bahamas. We have no identification of this victim just yet, but as soon as that information is made available, we will be sure to notify you.
The exact details are still unclear, but Strawn says the weather may have played a factor in causing the collision.
What we can tell you is that the rain was down. It was heavy at the time of this incident. We don't know all of the contributing factors in relation to this accident at this time, but our experts from the various agencies are on scene, and we are looking over the scene to be able to form a better understanding as to what really caused this incident.
The Ministry of Transport and Aviation opened a road safety exhibit at the mall at Marathon over the weekend with accident simulations based on real accidents on the streets of the Bahamas. Last month, Strawn told our news team that the number of traffic fatalities so far this year was higher than the number of traffic-related deaths during the same period last year. Today, it took a crane, several electric saws, and the manpower of police and fire officials to free the car from the front of the truck. The rear passenger door and the remainder of the roof had to be removed before the victim's body could be extracted from the crushed vehicle. Our news team understands the victim was a British visitor who was set to leave Nassau today. Reports are he had just left the Odyssey Aviation compound when the accident occurred. Further details about his identity could not be released until his next of kin has been notified. Strawn is reminding motorists to drive with due care and attention, heeding the speed limit and laws of the road. Reporting for NB12, I'm Christina McNeil.
In other news, the coroner's inquest into the death of Aaron Roll, the man who died in police custody last month, began this afternoon with multiple witnesses taking the stand. Our Jasmine Bonamy was in court. She has this report.
The much-anticipated inquest got off to a late start this morning after one of the lawyers said he was simply not ready to proceed.
Roll reportedly died of blunt force trauma while detained at the Southern Police Station on February 9th. His death certificate notes that he suffered a ruptured intestine and internal bleeding. Acting Coroner Janine Weish Gomez began hearing the case at 2 this afternoon after a jury of 4 women and 5 men were selected. The police force's forensic photographer Inspector Alfred Dean, Roll's father Godfrey Roll, and the arresting officer Reservist Corporal Ken Greenslade all testified in court today. Christina Galanos represented Roll's immediate family, while Wellington Olander represented Constable 2648 Smith and Constable 2126 Smith. On the stand, Roll's father testified that he had not seen his son since October when he was arrested by police on shop-breaking charges. Days after his October arrest, Roll later escaped the Southern Police Station and was recaptured in February. His father says while it was a fact that his son was on the run, he was a humble person and when faced with trouble, he always headed the opposite direction. Reservist Corporal Greenslade testified that he knew Roll for at least 4 years before he died due to his previous trips to the home for other investigations. Greenslade also said that Roll appeared to be in pain and was moving sluggishly when he arrested him in bushes behind his father's Ross Corner home. However, Galanos asked why he did not get medical help for Roll after he reportedly realized the 20-year-old's condition had deteriorated and there had been a foul odor coming from him. Greenslade responded that he could not force Roll to get medical help. After Greenslade's testimony, the inquest was adjourned to tomorrow afternoon. The inquest is not expected to assess guilt or innocence, but simply state how the victim died and possibly make recommendations to suggest ways of preventing similar deaths in the future. Reporting for NB12, I'm Jasmine Bonamy.
And the Prince Hepburn murder trial continued today with a witness for the prosecution testifying that the defendant admitted to her that he killed Nellie Mae Brown. Tanya James, who was a client of Hepburn, took the stand this morning and said she called the contractor the morning Brown's body was discovered, and he said, "I killed Nellie. Nellie broke my heart. Nellie was cheating." James said Hepburn then told her that he called the police. James told the court that she called the police herself and reported the crime a short while later. Hepburn was working on James's home at the time of his arrest. Police found Brown's body on the kitchen floor of an apartment at Bougainvillea Boulevard, South Beach on April 7, 2011. The trial continues tomorrow before Justice Indra Charles. And a young man became the country's latest murder victim after he was gunned down in the East Street area last night. Head of the Central Detective Unit, Paul Roll, was on the scene. He says police received reports of gunshots being fired just after 9:20. He told our news team what happened after that.
Officers responded where they met a male suffering from multiple gunshot wounds to the chest and head. Investigations revealed that the male was riding his bicycle along Honeycomb Street when two males emerged from a side corner wearing hooded jackets and dark clothing. One of these men produced a handgun and discharged several shots in his direction, fatally wounding him. EMS responded to the scene and examined him and pronounced him dead. At this time, we have no motive for this latest homicide and appeal to members of the public who may have some information that can help us to solve this, to give us a call.
Well, the man has been identified as 33-year-old Roderick Robinson Jr., a father of one. His father and uncle were on the scene last night, visibly upset once it was confirmed that their loved one had been killed. With another shooting incident having taken place just hours before in the same area, Roll said they're not ruling out a connection between those incidents. This is the 20th murder to take place so far this year. Stick with us. Coming up after the break, BEC's chairman calling on the government to ban the export of copper, claiming the corporation and major businesses are losing big time because of thieves. We'll tell you more about that and other stories when we come right back.